Welcome everyone coming to the GBM. Today is a P4 panel and let's get started.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Karlo, Sison. I'm a P4. I'm actually from California. My plans for next year, I'm moving back to California to continue working for CVS/Target.
So my name is Kevin and I'm a P4 student. I'm currently at the Wood Street Pharmacy for my advanced ambulatory care rotation right now. My plans for next year is I'll be doing a PGY1 residency at Ascension St. Joseph, which is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
My name is Peter Kunlun, and I was born and raised in China. Came to the United States for college, and currently on my last rotation at Wood Street as well for my community APA. And then I am going to University of Chicago Medical Center for PGY1 next year.
Start with the first question I have. What have you done to get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. So I didn't say what I'm doing right now in terms of rotations. I'm at work because I'm on my off mod. I took my last module 8 off. So I'm currently just studying for boards. And and I'm working and studying for boards. Also, since Peter brought it up, he's from China. I was born in the Philippines, but I pretty much grew up in California. What have I done to get where I am now? I've worked for CVS for, I think it's going to be 5 years. So I was working there for 1 year before I started pharmacy school. I wasn't one of those people who was completely set on working retail, but it's kind of the reason why I applied for pharmacy school. Kept my doors open, tried everything. But during my rotations, I had a rotation with a DL or a district leader here in Chicago, and kind of showed me the ropes and got me pretty well connected. I continued to work through pharmacy school as well at CVS, and always liked retail. And he kind of showed me what he does as a DL, and I kind of going through all my rotations, I kind of decided I still want to stick with retail. So I got an interview back in California back in December, and pretty much just studied for the interview. My DL kind of helped me on what I need to look into. And I got the job in January, and that's pretty much it. Just working, getting experience, and kind of learning how different stores work. Every single retail pharmacy, it's its own little business, its own little store, and every store is different. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. I think ever since like P1, I kind of knew I want to do clinical, but I wasn't sure exactly what I want to do. So I kind of branched out to try different things out. I volunteered, did 380, 390 at a specialty pharmacy here at UIC, just trying to see, different aspect of pharmacy, and also, TA as pharmaceutical class, just to see more of the industry side of pharmacy. But then I felt like I tried a lot of other things, including my APs. I also did a rotation in more of managed care settings. So it was outcome research. But I just felt like, clinical is still something I still want to pursue. I just cannot let go of the patient interaction I had from those clinical rotations. So that's why I ended up choosing, going to the clinical route, and I ended up applying for the residency next year. I guess, I don't know, things, I work at Northwestern, starting P2 year. I also did a summer internship at University of Chicago Medical Center for a summer internship. I was more like a clinical summer internship. I don't know what else. I was pretty involved with works when I was doing school, especially APA. It's a special work for me. So I don't know what else do I need to talk about. But yeah, Kevin, you want to?
Yeah, so what I have done to get to where I am right now is actually, so I have been interested in pharmacy for a very long time. I think it was in 4th grade, I already knew I wanted to do pharmacy. And I got into the UIC GPBA program. So I was fortunate enough to take Dr. Chan's honors class, where I was paired up with one of the P1 student at that time, and Dr. Chan, like her class invited a lot of different guest speakers to come talk about different careers in pharmacy. So for me, I always knew I wanted to do something in the clinical setting, but I always kept my option open just in case I changed my mind. And till now, I so far didn't through my rotations and all the different guest speakers I talked to, or mentors that I talked to, or things like just like reading about what they do on a daily basis. I still think that clinical aspect is what I was interested in. And to make sure that I get more experience in that, for me as a student, I took advantage of the health fairs. So APA does a lot of health fairs, and through that, being able to talk to patient and really practice what you learn in the real world is what really made me confirm that I did like the clinical setting, and it really helped me build upon my clinical knowledge and practice.
Thank you guys for those answers. Dr. Chan has actually just placed a question in the chat. So first of all, she says, you are all now P4 students, congrats. And how has your perception of pharmacy as a P1 student changed over the years compared to being a P4 student?
Karlo, you want to go ahead?
Oh yeah, sure. So my first insight in pharmacy was retail because I started working as a technician first before I applied to pharmacy school. And like all of you guys will see, and throughout pharmacy school, you'll see there's a lot of different fields of pharmacy. I know we have Peter and Kevin here going into residency. There's also different types of residencies, and there's also not internships, fellowships. If there's like people that want to go into industry, so there's all sorts of different fields of pharmacy. That's one of the biggest things for me. And also, along with that is what you learn in pharmacy school. There's a lot of things that was new to me, like all the PDATs, etc. Is definitely new things for me. Starting from retail, you don't really see a lot of that. But yeah, those are the big things. Definitely the different fields of pharmacy. Keep your mind open. When I was going through all my rotations, I really put my all through all of them, even though in the back of my mind I was still like, I think I'm going to stick with retail, but still try to learn about everything, get your full experience from pharmacy school because it offers a lot.
I guess my perception starting P1 year, because I think I was a little bit in a different boat because one of my mentor recommended pharmacy school to me because there's a possibility of go through clinical routes, so that's why I ended up doing pharmacy school. But then, regardless, I felt like there's so much things I learned throughout pharmacy school, like about like the different possibility of like what you can do as a pharmacist. You can do government, you can go into like pharmaceutical industry, you can do managed care, you can go into like government, teaching, retail, hospital, like all that, right? So that's something I definitely did not know as a P1. And yeah, I totally agree with what Karlo said. Just keep trying to find like what the best fit. It's not about just finding what you like. It's also about finding what you think yourself the fittest moving forward. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
No, nothing else to add. But it's pretty much similar. Besides the fact that I took Dr. Chan's class, so I knew that there was a lot more to do than just retail. But still, as a P1, I still feel like I was more familiar with what retail is, and going through again the GBMs and also just talking to people, I realized that there's so many other things you can do with a PharmD degree, and everything you learn throughout school, you can apply it to whatever career you decided to pursue. So like Peter mentioned, I just also kept my option open, and I still, at the end of the day, realized that I like the clinical aspect. And I guess another thing I would say is that how much of interprofessional collaboration there is with like the healthcare team. So again, taking back Chan's class, I knew you do talk, there is possibility for you to collaborate with the physicians. However, throughout pharmacy school and in rotation, I realized that it's more than just physicians. Like you can talk to like the social workers, the nurses, just a lot of healthcare professionals that you have to interact with just to provide the best care for your own patients.
How did you plan out your rotation schedule, side preferencing to achieve your career goals?
Yeah, so kind of like I said earlier, I wanted to see what I liked first before I kind of decide what I want to do. So I did my what do you call that? Medicine rotation, ambulatory care rotation, and what was my other one? I actually took 2 ambulatory care rotations because I liked ambulatory care before I went into the retail rotation where I was with the district manager. Um, so I did those first to see like, hey, do I want to go into residency? Do I want to do these things that I might want to do? I chose specifically ambulatory care because I love patient interaction. That's the reason why I chose retail as well. Like I love being able to speak to people. I love being able to make little impacts on people's lives. I prefer not to be in hospitals personally, but I was like, okay, let me see if I like this. Um, so that's kind of how I plan things out. I put all my difficult rotations at the start, just because that is like a way for me to kind of find out, hey, do I want to do these things? So I put my harder rotations at the start, and then I put the manager district leader rotation for CVS towards the time people would be doing interviews. So that was my 4th one, and that's kind of how I planned out my rotations, just to kind of line up with interviews, etc. And then the reason why I took my last mod off is because I wanted to get a license as a pharmacist right away, just in case I was going into retail, just so I could get licensed right away. So I'll get my boards done during this time. So I'm studying for boards during this last mod of my rotations. Yeah.
I guess it's a little bit too late for P3s, but for any of the P1s and P2s on the call, I feel like it's important to know what you want to accomplish before you start incentivizing. I mean, not incentivizing, before you planning to schedule your APPs. For me, my objective for my P4 year is deciding, because I know I want to do clinical, but I still want to try out other component of pharmacy, like, outcome research. So that's more like, I guess, managed care based. So like if I go into like pharmaceutical industry or that route. So I incentivized for it with academia. And then also kind of just to know, because they only got like 4, you have 4 required and 3 electives. So there aren't much wiggle room around. Just be very careful what you choose for your electives. And of course and also let's say if you want to do residency, or if you at least try, if you want to do residency, definitely have those harder mods earlier. So if with that mentality, you know what to plan. I think it would be a lot easier to plan out your API, so you have some kind of objective to achieve. And then for me, because I want to go into clinical and still want to try out industry or like managed care, so that's why I have mod 1. It's outcome research. I incentivize for it. Mod 2 to 4 was all clinical, so AmCare, medicine, and advancing patient medicine. It was elective. And my 5th one was hospital, which I have a little bit more time. And another reason why I chose hospital instead of other like less time-consuming rotation is that the rotation I had has a lot of administration part to it. And I was kind of like debating if I still, because there's different type of residency, right? I was kind of debating, should I do a traditional PGY1 or should I go into more of the administration focused, the combined program? So that's why I chose 5, my mod 5 as hospital, where there's more like admin focused. And then I have mod 6 off, prepping for interviews, 7 academia. That's just a little bit more time for interview, because residency interviews can go into mod 7, and then I didn't have a choice for mod A of community. But I'm learning a lot. Actually, like I feel like I've not been in community pharmacy since P1 year. I'm absolutely learning a lot. It's always good to see what's on the other side, because that's what makes you a well-rounded pharmacist.
All right, yeah, for me, so it's kind of similar to Peter. I knew I wanted to do clinical and I knew I wanted to pursue residency. So with that being said, you definitely want to try to take mod 6 off, because that's the time where a lot of the interviews happen. But I know if you want to do fellowship, on the other hand, you would try to take Mod 5 off because that's when they will do their interviews. So with that in mind, I already have Mod 6 off. So I sort of incentivized to have Mod 5 be my academia for a couple of reasons. One, academia is less of a clinical rotation, so it allows me to have more time to prep for my applications. And then also Mod 5, because it was academia, it's also an interest of mine because I love teaching. And I know throughout residency, there is options for a teaching certificate program. And eventually, when you come out as a clinician, there are opportunities for you to precept, or even as a resident, you are going to be precepting some students. So that was nice for me to like get experience of what that's like. And then in terms of my rest of the rotations, how I sort of preferences is that I make sure to get all my clinical rotations from Mod 1 to 4, just so that when I go into the residency interviews, I'm able to provide examples of specific patient cases that I can give examples during the interviews, because sometimes they'll ask you about, like, tell me about a time where you went above and beyond for a patient or something like that. And by me being able to come up with stories that are tied to clinical, since that's what I'm pursuing for, it will definitely help me out in that aspect. And another thing is that I made sure to try to diversitize my rotation sites. I try to select my rotations different institutions, just so that I can get a feel for what the institution is about and the culture over there, to help me determine if it's a place that I would like to potentially pursue residency in, and if I can see myself working there as a resident.
Thank you all for those answers. Yvonne has posted a question in the chat. So her question is, how did you prepare for API/IPI, and how did you approach preceptors for recommendation letters? Thank you, Yvonne, for the question.
I guess I can start.
No, I think it's more of a question for you guys. I'm gonna leave this one alone.
Okay. I guess for any rotations, the first thing you always ask the preceptor, well, like, how can you prepare for it? I think that's always a fair question. Ask that early, so you can start preparing early. And then for any of my clinical rotations, I at least try to review what I think was the most important topic on that for that subject. Let's say for and I also like Netflix book is actually a very decent resources, like just for like quick reviews. If you know any friends that graduated, have their board, and they are not using their Netflix book, just get it, like borrow it, buy secondhanded. It's actually a very good resource just for just to like overview of the subject. So, and I think that's mainly how I prepare for those, because you don't have, and then the things like you don't have much time between each rotation. There's only a weekend, so they aren't that much time you can really like get fully prepared. And obviously, and kind of no, you will never be fully prepared. You always learn as you go. So it's always have the mentality that you're there to learn, you're there to help the team. So just I think that's what's important. So don't be thrown off if you don't anything, when the preceptor asks you, just, make sure you're learning through the rotation, and that's the purpose of those rotations, right? So.
Yeah, so similar to what Peter said, there's really no time, because it's just, you only have Friday is an in-class session, and then you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you're back at your next rotation. So if you really want to, I guess you can try searching up your preceptor on Google or something and find out what specialty they work at. So like, for example, if they're dealing with HIV or ambulatory care, then to brush up on that if you really have time and want to. But like Peter said, is you really don't have that much time. So the best advice is just to go in and try your best, and just show that you're passionate to learn. I think that's what's more important, and that's what preceptors care more about, because if you show that you want to learn and care about your learning, they'll spend more time with you, and they will make sure that you achieve your goals. And then for your second question of how to ask my preceptors for recommendation letters, so how I go about it is that I just start off on the first week or first day. You probably will get a chance to sit down with your preceptor, and they'll try to get to know a little bit more about you. So for me, I already, again, know I want to do a residency. So I let my preceptor know that that's the career or that's the route that I'm pursuing. That way they can tailor the rotations to help you achieve that goal. And then with that, they already have that in mind. And then I would say after, I'll see how the rotation is going and how I'm performing myself. And then towards the middle or even at the end, then I can decide if I feel like I connect with this preceptor well, or I spend a lot of time with them, or I feel like they really can speak about my strengths and really know me enough to write me a strong letter of recommendation. Then I'll just approach them again and ask them like, if you're able to write me a strong and favorable recommendation. So make sure you say those two words or somewhere around those, because from my understanding, some people just ask if you can write a letter of recommendation and they say yes, but the recommendation isn't that strong, or it actually works out against them. So it wasn't really that great of a recommendation. So make sure you say that, and pretty sure most of the preceptor will be honest with you. If they feel like they can't write anything about you or have anything good to say, they will say they can't. And don't take offense to that, because there's still always other preceptors that you can ask. Just make sure you ask, I guess, why and get feedback so you can change it around for your next rotation.
Kevin and Peter, thank you. I guess you guys did learn something during your P1 year, and that's probably why you guys are where you are today. Go away, little girl. I'm obviously working at home. So it's true about letters of recommendations in terms of what Kevin had stated. Think of day one when you're on rotation. They'll give you objectives, whatever you're going to be learning throughout the next 6 weeks. Look at it and kind of go above and beyond what's being expected. And if you do that, then you can probably be confident in asking for a strong or excellent letter of recommendation at the end of the 6 weeks. If you kind of just follow the rules, didn't go out of your comfort zone, that is probably an individual you may not want to ask for a letter. So I think that what Kevin and Peter are both saying is, how well did I do? What more did I do than what was expected of me? Was I able to think outside the box? Was I able to go above and beyond what the expectations were? And if you're able to do that in your own mind and have your own checklist, then you should be able to get an excellent letter of recommendation. The other thing I want to go back and emphasize on, how do you prepare for APPEs or IPPEs? To be honest with you, you'll never be able to prepare for any of those except the day that you show up on rotation. I always get an email like 2 or 3 weeks in advance or the weekend of, like, what can I do to prepare for this rotation? And I usually start taking students right after in January. So you're coming back from a long break. And some of you guys will start emailing me in November. And like, seriously, if anyone's ever been on a rotation, I just go tell you to go enjoy your vacation and just start your rotation day one with me, and we go from there. There is nothing that you can do to prepare for a rotation, to be honest with you. Many of you will go back and look at your P1 lectures. It's like, I've studied all that. And as you probably heard me speak last Friday, everything that you learned today, it's going to be outdated tomorrow. Like, since she's on rotation with me right now. She's a P3. She learned things in P1 year. And during this rotation that she's only on with me every Thursday, what's happened, her guidelines has changed within a matter of 24 hours. So there is honestly nothing you can really do to prepare for clinical. The only thing you really need to do, and maybe Peter and everyone else who knows me, the most important class you'll ever need to know in your entire lifetime is what rotation, or not rotation, but what course. Which one is that? You guys want to say? Jessica, you're the leader.
DI.
DI, drug information. So if you're on rotation day one, you have a patient, go figure it out, look it up, and then you'll be able to answer any questions. We as professors will not be expecting you to be a expert in any content. Like I said, it takes several years to be an expert in something. So for us to think, oh, you'll be able to take the question and just come up with an answer immediately, It's not going to happen. And if you guys are that smart and you're a genius, you wouldn't even be here talking to us today. You'd be out in the real world making your 6 figures. You won't need us. So the reason why you're here is to learn, to make as many mistakes as you can, like I say. And then the more mistakes you make, the more you know what not to do when you're on the real world. We're here to be your back, to make sure that you don't hurt anyone, kill anyone, do anything silly. But when you're out there, you have no one else to blame but yourself. So take the opportunity during your rotations and learn the most of it. So that's all I really want to say. I don't know if I missed anything from that. Let's looking back. I think those are questions for you guys. I actually wanted to ask you somewhat something similar, because you are now like P4 students right now. And I know Peter, I can always pick on him as a P1. I don't think ever said no to anything, and maybe the same thing with Kevin. Would you guys do something differently knowing what you know right now 4 years later and going back to a P1? What would you do differently? Any regrets or changes, things that you can instill to a P1? Learn to say no? I don't know, but I just want to hear what your thoughts are.
Sure. I think I was a little bit afraid. I was afraid. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit of background. So during undergrad, I don't think I did enough stuff. So that coming to farm school, I feel like there's a really need for me in order to go kind of beyond in my professional life. I really need to start picking up, different activities. So that was my mentality in my P1 year, and then that led to a kind of a bad consequences because I was not saying no to a lot of things that I should have. But then I don't think I actually did do different things differently. It's just that if I didn't know those, like know my limit, or if I didn't pick up those, I wouldn't know how to say no, basically. I think I need to make those mistakes so that I know that what my limit and my boundary is, and then slowly from like starting P2 and P4 year, I would know how to say no, because you never know what your limit and your boundary is. And yeah, but I don't know if that answered your question though.
Kinda. What does Kevin have to say?
Yeah, I will also say the same thing as Peter, in that I think learning how to say no is important, because when it comes to the real world or anything you do, it's quality that matters, not quantity. So you can say yes to everything, but if you do a bad job on everything or just do 50%, it's gonna make you look bad. Instead, pick a few things that you're actually passionate about or you actually think you can time commit, and say yes to those and put in your 110% or above and beyond. That way it actually makes you stand out more, and you have more things to talk about and to put on your CV, and also when you have it on residency. So sometimes like the interview, they'll ask you about something on your CV, and if you can't have anything to say about it, then that actually makes you look bad. Instead, if you have a few things and they pick one and you're able to talk about what you did and how that has changed the org or make an impact, then it makes you look better. And then for me, I guess something I would change going into P1 year is really not focusing on the grades too much. I feel like for me, I was too stressed out about my grades all the time. And I think grades are important, but it really isn't everything that residency programs look at, or fellowship or anything. And if you're working at a real job, like I'm sure Karl can tell you, they probably didn't ask for his GPA when he was looking for a job. So it matters to some extent, but really don't put your focus on it and stress out. And for me, I think because I was focused on the grade, I feel like I was just more memorizing for exam instead of really understanding why or the real reason behind it. I feel like I was just memorizing for the most part, and obviously after exam, I would forget a lot of things. So if I were to go back, I would change my study habits to really understand why certain drugs are prescribed or why certain drugs have this side effect instead of just purely memorizing it.
Great tips. Carol, do you have anything else to add? Or is he going to count some pills?
No, I was just gonna kind of add to like the previous question actually. So for people that are a little uncertain on what you want to do, so like I said, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do going into my rotations. Let your preceptor know. Like I told my preceptors, hey, I'm leaning towards retail, but I'm not 100% sure what I want to do. So I treated every single day of my rotations like it was a 6-week interview, and I put my heart into it, etc. And they knew what I was trying to go through these 6 weeks to figure out if this is something I wanted to do. And I think it's a good way to kind of set expectations for them as well. And for some of my rotations, even they told me like, hey, you do great at this, and they even offered like a letter of recommendation. But you kind of have that in your back pocket just in case you change your mind in the future, because you never know, if you want to go into this field or change your mind later and decide to go into residency. So I think for the people who are more undecided, um, still treat it like a 6-week interview. Still go in there and put your 110% into it, because you'll never know. You'll never know if you fall in love with that rotation or anything like that, and you change your mind on what you want to do. So yeah.
And I think something that's important for all of you, since we have 70 people on this call, is that as a P1, a P2, P3, and even P4, and hopefully later somewhere in your P4 year, you really know, it is okay when someone asks you, what do you want to do when you graduate? It's a common question I always ask everyone. And a lot of the students will immediately tell me, oh, I want to do a residency when I graduate. You don't need to say that. It's totally okay for you to say, I don't know. That's the reason why I'm going to school right now. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to get all these experiences to know what I want to do when I do grow up. So don't feel pressured. The other thing I'll also stress is that we are at UIC and most of us are residency trained. We also can see whether one is a candidate to be a resident or not in most cases. And some, they go in the right direction, some don't, or we kind of steer them in the right direction. But even though we may highly encourage you to go into a residency, it may not be the perfect fit for you guys. And you don't have to say, I'm going to do a residency, when in fact you just might be comfortable going to retail or staffing in a hospital. You have to see what is right for you when you graduate or at that moment. You might have plans to do a residency, and then halfway through your P4 year, you realize that this was not meant for you, or the fact that maybe halfway through residency, you want to go into med school. It's totally fine. You have to understand you're the one that's going through life, and you have to decide what's going to make you happy at the end of the day. It's not about dollars, but it's really about quality of life, the work-life balance. Some people's like, wow, I've been on this rotation. All I do is work my butt off from 6 a.m. till like 7 p.m. Where's me time? And then that might steer you to do more industry, or maybe it is working in retail, or maybe the finances just don't line up at the end of the day. You have more than, I don't know how much your tuition is, 100,000, 200,000, whatever that may be. And maybe working a year or two in retail makes more sense to you, or maybe you're starting a new family. There's many reasons, but I just don't want you to all feel pressured to be thinking we have to do a residency at the end of the day, or that if you don't, your pharmacy degree is not more precious than someone who did complete a residency. It's not by any means. I actually look at Karlo to be smarter than I, because he knows everything. He has to deal with every single customer coming through him, and being a multitasker of how do you vaccinate COVID and figure out how to vaccinate a flu vaccine, and dealing with someone in the background saying, hey, where's the toilet paper located? In what aisle? There's so many things that's going on at that one moment. I can only focus on one thing, the liver, and nothing else. I'm like totally narrow-minded. So kudos to Karlo for taking on that challenge. And I wish we had more people like so I just want to leave it at that. And if you guys have anything else to say, since you guys are going in the real world, but feel free to not say, oh, this is what I want to do. It's okay to say, I don't know.
So Yvonne has a question in the chat. So how did you prepare for residency/retail interviews? And then previously she had also asked, looking back on rotations, residency application, specifically if you would do anything differently. And then going back to the interviews, what did you do to help you stand out from other candidates?
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Chan, for your words, by the way. Yeah, for me with my interview, I was able to speak to someone who actually interviews with people. So he was really able to guide me and teach me where to go. But I think with a lot of jobs, you as how you work in terms of retail is kind of your interview already, right? I've worked at a ton of different stores. I've worked with a lot of different managers and a lot of different stores. And I think every day is kind of like an interview and people get to know how you work. So that's definitely part of it, because people will say good things about you. People will ask your managers, ask who has worked with you and know how you work and how you talk to patients, how you work with patients. Um, so I think my interview was one thing in terms of being able to talk about my experiences, but a lot of it comes from actually working, in my opinion. I worked a lot during pharmacy school. I worked at least like 20 hours a week. Even right now, I still do. Keeps me connected to what I like to do, and it's if you know and you're confident in what you do, it shows when you interview as well. So in terms of my preparation, I felt like my 4 years of working was my preparation, but also in terms of specific questions, that's something you could ask from people who interview or other managers and stuff like that. Um, yeah, that was my main kind of preparation for it.
For residency interviews, there's a lot of question pool that's available online, and make sure you actually try to answer all of them, like as you are interviewing, and then always use the STAR methods if you can. It's situation, task, action, and respond, like how you responded. So basically by providing examples, so that will back up your claim, right? Because you are trying to say something good about yourself, but what example have you, like what have you done actually in the past, to actually back up the claim. So just study that and do that with friends. I think that also helps, with family, friends, and going over those questions again and again. That will just, I think, the first interview will be always nerve-wracking because it is your first residency interview. But after the first one, after the first couple questions, you'll get a little bit smoother. You're getting confident. Also, always practice. Can you tell me something about yourself? I think that's almost the question every program is going to ask. So, and also network. I think that's also important. Try to study who's going to be on your interview, like on your interview days. What specialty they have, or what interest they have, if it's like residents, if someone knows the residents, or or you don't just have to study for those who's going to be your interview. So like try to branch out to whoever it's their past residents. What do they say about the program? Anything that they think it's a focus of the program, so you kind of have a better idea of what they're trying to accomplish through the residency program there. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, so in terms of like what Peter said, there is like a lot of questions they can ask, and it can be about anything and everything, and also it can be really, really random questions. Like I think one of mine was like, if you were to have dinner with 3 people, who would it be and why, or something like that. So I guess my advice is that try practicing with your friends or your classmates or whoever, because practice makes perfect. And then 2, you can look up some of the common interview questions, but I would warn you guys, like it's impossible to have an answer for all of them. What's more important is just have a general idea of what you're going to say, because one thing you don't want to do is seems like you in an interview you're like scripted. So it seems like you're reading off a screen or you have it all memorized like a robot. I don't think they like to hear that, because they can tell. Because say for example, they tell me about yourself. You tell them about yourself because you're sure you have it memorized. And then they throw in a question like, if you were a drug, what would you be and why? And then you start stuttering, then they can obviously tell that you memorized the other ones and your real interview skills, you weren't able to present yourself. And then another thing I feel like is important is in every interview question, make sure you use the STAR method. You can Google it. It just helps your answer become more clear and concise. And that way it's easy for the residency program directors or the interview panels grade your response, because interviews is hard to grade, and for them to grade, to be fair, they have to grade it in some sort, so they utilize the STAR method. And then I guess Yvonne's other question was, how do you stand out from other candidates? I guess the real thing is really just be yourself. So don't try to be something that you're not, because it's a 1-year residency, and if you be yourself and just think about it this way, if they don't accept you or they don't like how you interview, then that's fine, because that means you're not a fit for their program. And that's fine, because you don't want to pretend to be like someone and they think you fit in their culture. Turns out you go there 1 year for 1 whole year and realize that the culture is different. And that would just make both ways miserable. So just be yourself. Don't um, don't be scripted, and also try providing examples whenever you can, utilizing STAR method. And then I guess another thing I forgot to mention earlier, just because Peter mentioned it, is networking. That's definitely really important, because as we all know, pharmacy is a small world. Everyone knows each other. So just to give you a real quick example, my community rotation is actually where Karlo's working at right now. And then my preceptor, my coworker, and my preceptor actually went to class together, and they know each other. And then I interviewed another of the pharmacists, knew a residency program director that I interviewed with. So everything all comes towards everyone knows each other. So for me, again, I already knew I was going to be going to do residency at that point, but I still took my community rotation seriously because of this reason, where everyone just knows each other. So you just want to have the best impression for yourself.
Thank
It
you.
looks like we're out of time, right? It's 1:21.
Yes, so I think we can take Roxanne's last question, and then we'll wrap up for the day. But I also just reposted the link for attendance. So if anyone has to head out really quick, be sure to get your attendance before you go. But last question from Roxanne is, throughout your time in pharmacy school, how did you find your mentor or mentors? Thank you, Roxanne, for setting that in.
I guess there's two. Oh, I guess there's two ways you can really do it. One is just there's like formal mentor programs that a lot of organizations have. That if you're a little bit shy, like on the shy side, you don't want to reach out. But I think it is the best to your interest to reach out yourself to see that let's say if you're interested in oncology, and then there's the research project you work on, just email them and see if they have a spot open. That's how you start networking, and it's how you have to find out your mentor. And because I think I utilize both methods of just reaching out myself, as well as go through those formal mentor program. Because sometimes you will get weird. No, I wasn't weird, but because I felt like your personality has to kind of match for those mentee here, right? Because you may find a mentor, but your personality doesn't really match. So yeah, I would definitely reach out or ask your friends. Do you know anyone that's working in that field? Can you send a text or send an email, CC you in the email, and see if I can just reach out to that person. And yeah.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention earlier about how pharmacy is a small world again. So Dr. Chan actually knew one of the residency program coordinators that I interviewed as well. So that's just another example of how small this world is. And yeah, on regards to your question about how you find your mentors, like Peter said, there are some organizations that have a formal mentorship program, or in organizations they each have a faculty advisor. That's a good way to start. Another way would be your preceptors, or even the pharmacists that you work with. You can just express your interest and see if they know someone in the field that you might be interested or you have more questions about, and they can connect you through it that way. And I feel like Peter said, just ask. It never hurts to ask. The worst thing they will say is no, and that's totally fine. And again, don't take offense to that as well, because they just may be busy and they really don't feel like they can give you some advice. And there's plenty of other pharmacists or mentors who are willing to take on students to ask. And then another thing I would say is just like upperclassmen. So like if you can't find anyone, you can always reach out to like P3s or P4s. Maybe they have been in a rotation or is truly passionate about that field and can speak about it as well.
Yeah, I have nothing really to add to that, but I kind of wanted to answer that next question on the list just so I could shout out my favorite rotation. It was advanced ambulatory care with Dr. Renata Smith for HIV rotation. If you guys have any questions about that one, let me know. It's a great way to really help out the community and have like a lot of autonomy in terms of treating patients or helping patients in the community. So yeah, cool. What rotation side did you like the most and why? Just really get to help the community. That's the biggest thing for me. So yeah.